Surviving a security incident that goes outside your company's walls, then you and your team emerging in one piece after it's all done, that can feel like a miniature version of the year 2020. And for me personally, 2020 has shaped up to be like this completely unfun haunted house with zero exits. And while the danger, the loss, and the depression of a security incident is nowhere near actual 2020 scale, it's not even the same thing. The way that the public, your company, or even you treat yourself can feel like it is for a short time. My name is Coleen Coolidge, and I've been leading security at Bay Area startups. Who am I? Things that would be relevant to folks who are listening today. I do these types of jobs for years at a time. Starting in 2014, I switched things up from leading security at more traditional, larger type companies. Instead, I'm leading security at startups. It's just more fun for me that way. And in the last several years, I've also been lucky enough to be associated with a couple of successful exits, an IPO and an acquisition. But really, like what I'm about is finding interesting challenges at great companies, companies that have a lot of upside and potential and treat their people well. Then I convince lucky security people who are actually just really good at their security domain and a lot better at security than I am to come work alongside me. So what are we covering today? Well, first, there's this relationship between vacations, holidays, and security incidents that I wanted to address. And then we'll look at a relatively tame incident that my team and I had to deal with. Then we'll reflect on what a security incident feels like and what it can do to any healthy, happy team, and what we can do to crawl out of that hole because it doesn't feel good. And next, we'll be talking about specific and practical fight back tactics, ones that my team and I have been successfully using. And finally, we'll broaden the conversation to talk about how to support the security community around us, especially in that type of situation. We all have security friends working at different places, which means we need to support one another when times are tough. So setting the stage, let's first talk about vacations and holidays and security people. The holidays, vacations, not doing any stressful work. In fact, your only job on vacation is to relax. And what these children feel is what we all want to feel on our vacation. But we're security people. And while other people enjoy their time off, maybe playing in the snow, savoring the end of a fun-filled day with a cup of hot cocoa, and sleeping soundly at night, security people worry about incidents that destroy vacations and sow chaos at work. That's what we do. However, we still all weirdly plan to take time off. We have this idea that maybe it'll be okay. I'm guilty of it myself. I'm planning on taking some time off around the holidays. And as that date gets closer that you're ready to step out, maybe, we start bringing out our superstitious practices. We'll like knock on wood a little bit more. We'll chastise coworkers who say something that's flippant and unjaded, like, wow, it's been pretty quiet this week. They use the Q word. Why did they use the Q word? This, my friends, is a security person's leftover trauma. And when we do take time off, there's this lurking fear at the base of our holiday enjoyment. There are sirens coming. Just ignore that. And of course, we'd have known that there would be a security incident looming as we neared the sunny, beautiful home stretch of Labor Day weekend 2019. Not because of vulnerabilities that are on the list to get fixed, a list that every security practitioner working everywhere has, but because the timing was holiday weekend 2019. For those folks not from the US, Labor Day weekend is our last hurrah for the summer when the weather's warm, the barbecues are fired up, beaches get crowded, and people, including security people, try to avoid work. There's a few on-call engineers that are holding down the fort and working. But even when that's you, you're still trying to make plans with your friends and family after you do a bit of work for the day. And so for us, we were closing out a great week. Our ISO 27001 paperwork was done. I was making an offer to a candidate, and we were making excellent progress on our quarterly goals. Then this happens. Have you ever had to write one of these bulletins or emails in your security career? Well, unfortunately, I've had to help write a couple in my long career. Never look forward to this type of writing. So the basics of it really is that someone on our engineering team had their account taken over by an unauthorized user. This unauthorized user was able to look around and see information about how our business customers used our app. That user could see business contact information, business usage information. However, this user could not see customer and end user information. But still, it majorly sucked for us. All security people hate incidents because we all feel like what a giant failure this is and inconvenience for us and our customers. One of the many lamentable points about this particular event was that in our upcoming quarters, we had solid plans to execute on further lockdown steps. It's that security person's dream, like eventually lock everything down to where you can always sleep at night. And unfortunately for us, timing gets the better of us. So digging into this bulletin a little bit more, well, we wanted to include details like, when did we learn about this? Of course, over a holiday. What data did it involve? Business contact data, business usage data. And one important emphasize with the business customers in this bulletin is there was no end user customer data. So at least there was a very small win for the team. Didn't really feel like it though. Going to the last part of this bulletin, we felt like we needed to include like a moving forward section to talk about our immediate steps and then our near-term additional steps to prevent a scary story like this from happening again. We decided against talking about huge plans in the distant future, the big security dream that we all have 3 to 5 years from now, how everything's going to be perfect, because we felt that was outside of the main issue. And putting ourselves in our customers' shoes, it's like, this is not the right time to talk about how awesome we're going to be in the future. And even to me, it would just sound like a bunch of empty promises. Just tell me right now, what are you going to do to handle this situation? And then what's right after that? And so that's the concise near-term list to hold us accountable. And if your team has ever had to write one of these, you know that it's an art. It can feel like a chaotic experience because you really do at least want one representative from every involved team. So you have your security folks on there, your legal folks, PR, customer success, engineering, exec, to review this language, the order, the everything. And after the draft has gone through everyone's reviews and edits, it probably won't feel like the same draft that your team originally wrote, but you will need to stand by it. So make sure that you're good with what it says. So to recap our Labor Day holiday fun, we went from thinking we were going to enjoy the Labor Day holiday and long weekend to working on this incident and continuing to work through the long tail of cleanup and comms over and over again with everyone. So that includes customers who are not happy with us, and rightfully so. But when you're in this whirlwind, it feels like the pieces of it just keep cycling around you, and it's just not going to end. It's exhausting. And that's normal security incident mitigation and remediation when your security incident becomes public knowledge. It just gets extra hard. Now, people talk about the agreed upon steps to resolve an incident like this. We all have our checklists and people get in line and do it. But what people don't talk about is the emotional and energy drain and the remediation needed for that. Remediation for that could look like hiring more people to spread the work around, forcing some tired people who worked on this to take vacations, addressing the general mood, rewarding different teams who pitched in and helped, and then also reminding folks who are struggling that there are mental health professionals that will help them address their feelings of anxiety, guilt, and burnout that accompanies something like this. And finally, leaders should resolve to find ways to fight back against future potential events. And I'll have a little bit more on that later. So you know what? No matter how bad you feel during any security incident, no matter how long it seems to be going on and how painful it is, it always comes to an end. And then when that happens, you'll have some time to start thinking and start reflecting, which is what you should always do. I think this can be a very helpful exercise for those of you who have already weathered a pain in the neck security incident, particularly one that's public, or for those of you who haven't yet but are very scared about this happening. So fair warning, I'm not a trained professional in like mental health, and I'm not 100% sure I can put you back into a good place after this, but I will try. So let's dive in. Do you feel haunted by the specter of future security incidents because of previous ones that you've had? Or because maybe you know where all the unaddressed vulnerabilities are, in essence, where the bodies are buried at your company? So for this exercise, conjure this in your mind. What's that big public security incident that you are afraid of? Now, if you could actually jot down or make note of the feelings that arise when you start thinking through that big security incident that could happen to you where you're working, do you feel like you're starting to shut down? Do you feel like you're trying to move away from that? Are you not sitting with it? If you're good with it because you like pain, and most security people do like a little bit of torture because we're doing this job, would your coworkers shut down a bit? Would they move away and not help you think through this exercise with your execs? So these feelings that you're having, it's like what happens to you when you enter a nightmare or a haunted house as a little kid. You feel like you're cursed. You start shutting down. You can't escape no matter how much you want to. So your brain goes into a different mode. We absolutely felt like the unluckiest security people that we knew, at least at the moment. We felt as though we were all alone and that the situation was going to grow more dire by the hour. You can also feel like you're in this constant state of mild to severe panic, depending on the hour. You feel like you're slowly losing your grip on reality. And for us, due to the heightened stress that we endured for weeks, none of us were sleeping more than a handful of hours a night. We had trouble concentrating during the day. We doubted ourselves. Some of us felt depression, and some of us felt like we were bad at our jobs. It was not a great time. You also may feel like everyone's going to be punished. Like there's some kind of security scarlet letter that you have to wear on yourself. It's the stain that can't be removed in your career. We personally felt like the other shoe was going to drop at some point, that some thing that was this unnamed and scary thing was coming for us. Everyone working the incident somehow felt inexplicably personally responsible, which is not true, but it doesn't matter because that's how you feel. We also felt like there was no end in sight with the mitigations and the comms and process improvement change that would come. The security incident itself really isn't even the worst thing, right? No lives are lost. If nobody goes out of business and no lives are lost, then really this is an intellectual exercise. Yet you still remain in its grip, repeatedly suffering as its victim, and you feel like you can't fight back. And what I want you to recognize that there are these near-term emotional and mental dangers from security incidents. You might be burning out in the security field overall, which we don't want you to do because all of us need each other. There aren't enough security people to do these jobs. So please don't burn out and quit and do something else. Or you might be fearing the next incident so much that effective steps aren't taken to deal with the next one or preventing the next one. You need to break that fear cycle and eventually capitalize on all the bad things that have happened. Yes, you are allowed to capitalize on all the bad things that have happened. We did do that. But if you and your team are damaged from this incident, can you really just switch immediately to the offensive side? No. You should not immediately jump to the offense if you or your team is damaged and limping from this security incident. You're just not going to do as good of a job as you should. Also, just a quick note, we're going to take a little bit of a break from the intense and haunted imagery of the last group of slides. I realize it's a hard year and I was kind of bringing it a little too much. So we'll go a little bit lighter. So you thought you could just go on the offense. What were you thinking? It's just like you don't drain the cooked rice and then rinse the cooked rice. You also don't rush into your ass kicking phase before you repair the emotional damage that certain security incidents can cause you and your team. How effective can you guys be anyway if you're tired, anxious, guilty, scared, or depressed? Not very. Now, I know that there's this huge stigma against talking about one's own mental health or just mental health in general in both Western and Eastern families and culture. I know because I occupy both simultaneously. And I'm here to break that, hopefully, by stepping you through my own process of bolstering myself against the security job pressure, whether that's dealing with incidents, office politics, how are we going to get the resources to do what we need to do, etc. The job is stressful. So let's normalize talking about this, shall we? And yes, there is an app for that. Actually, there are several. My employer happened to provide access to a mental wellness app called Ginger. These types of tools are great for security people, particularly security people who suffer from incident trauma. If your employer doesn't cover something like this, my advice is to get a better employer. I'm not joking. And more about that later, too. And before you start worrying about my personal mental health privacy, you should know that I don't care. There's way too much hand wringing and protecting going on that would prevent me from moving forward as a human being like I want to. And these outdated prohibitions just sort of exacerbate the problem. And so the following is my own experience, and I'm more than happy to share the results with you. In late October, I did another mental health checkup, and it's really this easy if you like apps. For those of you who feel mortified about the thought of even taking the first steps toward good mental health, you can close your bedroom door and bust out the mobile app and do your check-in in the privacy of your own room. And a quick note here, to keep it snappy, I skipped some of the questions where my answers were no issue because it's just less interesting. This is as easy as answering 16 questions by reading and clicking through. These questions on screen pertain to my level of interest doing anything over the last couple of weeks, as well as remembering how many days that I felt down. So just a quick reminder, this was from October. This is about mid-October. Wasn't feeling great. And it was pretty challenging in October. November is shaping up to be quite an interesting challenge for everyone, but for some reason, I seem to be handling it a little bit better. And what's on screen now is these are questions about appetite issues. And for me, that was a yes, as well as feeling like a failure. Unfortunately, that was also a yes in October. And those things factor into anxiety and depression as well, as you might have already guessed. Both of these on screen pertain to out of control worrying, which should actually remind all of us that security people are at higher risk for various mental health concerns, and that we should always pay closer attention to that, because I think the job exacerbates the issues. You know, I wonder sometimes, is it the job that makes us this way because we sort of double down on only seeing the bad and dealing with the bad? Or is it that the job attracts those of us who have been worrying for free before we even got into the security field? Well, maybe now we just get paid for it. I don't know. I don't know which one it is. Both of these questions have to do with not being able to relax and feeling restless during the month of October. In a post-COVID world, I am planning on taking a very long vacation so that the answer to this trouble relaxing question goes from nearly every day to not at all. Really looking forward to that. And this last interesting question here asks about feeling easily annoyed or irritable. Sounds like a number of people I know, and if I'm honest, like that's me all the time. I just hide it. So it wasn't that helpful of a question for me. Okay, now after answering those questions, you get to this results page. And so this is the results for my October check-in. Almost instant gratification. The results on this particular check-in make me think that this actually tracks pretty well with a lot of security professionals at a handful of points throughout our typical year. And the insights they provided me showed me that in October, anxiety I'm experiencing means that it's difficult for me to relax. And the second insight was, and while not as regularly, I experience feelings of failure, and it's something that I need to address. So specifically, I feel like I let my team down. I wish I could shield them from even more stuff than I already do because they deserve better. But sometimes, and more so this year than other years, I feel like I'm just hanging on like the rest of us. We're just barely hanging in there. And then outside of work, I feel like I'm not spending enough time with people I love, my friends and my family, and I feel very guilty about that as well. So that doesn't help. So what I love about this app is it doesn't just survey you, make you feel bad. It doesn't leave you in this lurch with something you already suspected about yourself anyway. In my case, it prompted me to address my issues by keeping a positive evidence diary. And that is something that I keep right here by my desk. And the reason why it's suggesting that is because it's saying that since I'm experiencing this, I have a tendency to over notice or only notice the negative things that are happening at work and life. It's like my negative mood is this magnet to only notice what's, going wrong, and unchecked these things may get worse over time. So on my positive evidence diary that was accumulating for October, the first couple of things are wins I associate with my work. Then the third one is something that I try to do for my relationship, actually have a scheduled date night. And the fourth and fifth ones are ones that are associated with physical health and mental health. So that notebook that I keep near my work laptop, I keep adding more positive evidence diary entries because I'm like, maybe I'm one of those negative security people, like most security people probably are. And this week, I'm happy to report that I also completed a November check-in on the app, and the results kind of surprised me. So in addition to the October one, I'm trying to do it every month. And then also giving this talk. That's a pretty good accomplishment. I had to prepare for that. So yeah. Okay, so now that we're on the road to recovery from that security incident damage, or really just even the security job damage, now we can be persuaded to fight back. What does fighting back look like? So instead of remaining incident victims, we chose to ensure that we had an effective way to keep driving meaningful changes all the time. Existing weaknesses in everyone's security story should get fixed faster. That's part of it. However, it's always a struggle to get everyone on the same page as security is. Have you considered what your security asks look like from the product team's point of view? They care about customer stories. And while engineers that you work with may understand the need to address a vulnerability without the context of your scary story, product managers, not so much. And more product managers are in charge of what engineering work gets done. So you need to give them the kind of scary story that keeps you up at night as a security person. Walk them through your scenarios, because why should security people be the only ones cursed with this knowledge? And in your scary stories, be sure to reference tickets. Your tickets should all link back to your stories so that the person who's scheduling the work for the sprint or the person who's actually doing the work for the sprint understands how that work fits into eliminating this scary story. So keep it going. Keep creating stories for everything that stresses you out. The great thing about these stories for security people is that you can create a whole collection and build related quarterly remediation themes off of them. And in making these stories, absolutely make sure the collection has plenty of story material that reflects learnings from your previous incidents, whether they're your incidents at the place you're working at, or the place you worked at before, or other companies' incidents. So you can think of it as journaling your fears and getting paid for it, getting paid to work through your trauma, and also making your company safer. You can continue this collection to help drive multi-year roadmaps with other teams, and then you can make significant progress company-wide. Your company might even be proud enough of the way that you're handling security that they might ask you to present at their annual conference. Who knows? As I mentioned earlier, ensure that tickets track this work. The tickets represent vulnerabilities, and they are great because you can report off them. So how did we do with that challenge? This is not the fanciest system, but we realized that just creating tickets for our stories without also reporting on their progress means that, to refer to the analogy earlier, it's like all of the lights are still off in that haunted house that you're stuck in. You can't find the exit quick enough and get out of there. So remember that security incident? Our teams had done a lot of great work for the relatively small amount of time that we were at the company. Education and security design reviews had been in place for a couple of years. And the team had layered in help for engineering teams in the form of automation to locate and help fix vulnerabilities at different layers of the stack. Things that make it easier for eng teams to keep on top of their vulnerability backlog and eventually comply. But education, reviews, and tickets aren't enough. You need to turn on all the lights to see how the vulnerability backlog is actually being addressed, department by department. You might be thinking from this colorful screenshot that as soon as weekly metrics are put into a spreadsheet, vulnerabilities magically start to self-heal. But then you would be wrong. We had to do a little bit more. Because do you know who's as interested as you are in the state of your vuln management? Your exec team. Yes, they do have time to read your carefully curated email telling them exactly what they need to know, what part of your organization might be struggling to meet its commitments for vulnerability management. And we also look at that as product quality. It's not a separate thing. And this is an email that we do every week. It goes to our CEO and our exec team. Who else should be just as interested as your exec team in vulnerabilities that could cause a public security incident? Your board. The security org at your company also has the job of ensuring that the board understands the state of your company's weaknesses in plain language. Also, the board may be able to help you in particular if you think that there's a potential conflict of interest at your company. Perhaps there's something weird with the security reporting line. Maybe it's a very overly political organization. I don't know. Who does security report to? Do you feel that security's messaging to the top is squelched and that the people at the top don't really understand because there's this weird redaction process? So the board is obligated to hear you out, or your security org's rep if you're not talking to them directly, and provide help if your management isn't helping you. Your security org should get an audience with the board at least once a year, but at least send them something quarterly if you can, if they're not already aware of what's going on. And make sure that the message that you send doesn't go through like the Soviet era redaction techniques where it looks kind of like that with black bars everywhere. And if you find that this is happening to you, that message isn't getting to the board and they have no idea what's going on, but you're freaking out, since you have the strength, because you're taking good care of yourself, you can fight back. You can raise your voice. You can ask for a personal audience with the board and in a more casual conversation and ask, how should I present this information in a way that's useful to the rest of the board? If none of that works, or you don't have the energy to fight, you can always find a better environment to practice security, because they're out there. More about that later. Going back to that vulnerability metrics spreadsheet, you'll notice that there are additional departments listed there, like HR and finance. This is us starting to measure security vulnerabilities in every department across the company as we find them. And our security org cannot take credit for that. That was our CEO, Peter. He asked for this. He loved the weekly emails and the distillation and the visibility so much that he asked us to start tracking all the vulnerabilities in any department in exactly the same way. So we started tracking and emailing on those. Give your exec team some credit. Take the time to break down the problem and the impact in a way that's transparent for them. Make it easy for them to understand and ask clarifying questions to make good decisions. Remember, they are experienced and successful decision makers. They do it all day long and they've done it for years. You have a great chance of getting what you need if you explain security risk properly to them in real terms. Okay, now we're going to start broadening our security point of view from just our teams and our company to expand our point of view to security people in our community. We are not alone, and we should not act like we are alone. So even though it feels like it, incidents aren't actually nightmares. They're just a long series of challenging tasks, sometimes sequential, sometimes repeating, sometimes unpleasant, that we all have to execute well. It's a part of our job. Always move yourself back to your mental and emotional center, because you're going to do your best work when you're there. And once you are there, help others get there. And when your security friends at other companies have a security incident, they don't need your Twitter trash talk or frequent work interruptions texting them to spill the tea. They need your empathy. What if they reach out to you asking for help in a very generic way? Help them and don't put them on the spot. Don't put them in a position where they have to lie to you or they're like, I can't trust this person. This person's just trying to get info out of me. One of the bright spots that I remember from that last incident, our security friends at another company in the Bay Area sent us a very special set of incident cupcakes. This mattered to us because they weren't trying to siphon any juicy details from us. And they probably also knew that we hadn't been eating regular meals and we definitely hadn't been treating ourselves lately. And that act of kindness, knowing we know how you feel, this won't make it all better, but it'll make it better for probably 5 minutes. That equals friends forever for us. Message for the security community. How many of us want to talk more openly about security incidents with one another so we can learn from one another and improve faster? Don't you get the feeling that we're sort of living the same lives and making the same mistakes over and over again because there's a lack of information? So a group discussion like this would, of course, feel better when there are Chatham House rules governing it. Why would you do this for folks who've never done this before? It's about sharing wisdom and painful learnings with the goal of all of us improving. We all work in security at places where we have someone else's data or critical services. So, it's our job to protect that, and we should help each other to do that. Educating one another across companies is a way that we can spread learnings across the world and improve security posture everywhere instead of just in our company, because what does that do? And when the security incident isn't public knowledge and people are talking about it in a Chatham House way, don't ever attribute details to people, don't ever attribute details to companies, and don't ever attribute details to unique situations, because that just destroys that trust. And the regulatory type people in our community, how many of you can say that you honestly feel okay with us security practitioners talking about incidents and learning in an open way? Now, we know we make you nervous a lot, and you like to say no to things. You would just rather shut it down. I have friends who work at other companies and their legal departments don't allow them to go up on stage and talk about anything. They can't talk, they can't blog, they can't tweet. It's like they don't exist. So what good is that to the rest of the security community? I think that if we were talking more openly about it, but in a responsible way, this is better security for our collective customers. Can we challenge you all who are this way, who are a bit more protective, to change things in your daily practice to make it easier on all of us to provide great security to our customers? Could you do things like use less problematic language in contracts? So wording and terms need to be improved. Can you standardize reasonable and situationally intelligent contract terms between companies? Can you rethink your checkbox behavior and overly punitive actions, which disincentivize the right kind of security behavior? Think about the spirit of the law and help us move to a more blameless culture. Because if you really want security to be better, like I think you do, then you will help us with this. And just putting this out there, if you really, really cared about your customer security, instead of asserting paper power over security people, work with us to achieve this goal of openness, safety, and effectiveness. And a little message for security people. I told you I'd get to it. In case that you feel like you are not being supported either during or after or way after an incident, maybe people only paid attention to your roadmap during the incident or right after it, but then they went back to normal, whatever normal is. You have to remember that good security people have lots of other options and a big community to help line up those options. Every good security person deserves to work in a place where they are believed, their work is respected, and the security practice overall is empowered to do its job. And if that's not happening, you know what's about to happen. An option to work at a better company is a great option for you. And if you're ready to jump, make sure that jump is to a place that really has a heavy investment in security, listens to what security people have to say, particularly when it pertains to preventing or limiting the negative effects of large incidents. Is that exec team and board paying attention? Are those security people able to go up on stage and teach others? Like, these are signs that maybe that could be a good place for you to work. Word gets around about companies who treat their security people well and the ones who treat their security people poorly. We have friends in all of these different companies, and our friends are just as aware that good security people always have options. Good security people are hard to find. At Segment, we work here, Segment Security Team, because our company listens to us and they invest heavily in our plans to make the company more secure. We also happen to be hiring. So do yourself a favor, bookmark and keep checking back your favorite company's job pages because new security roles open up throughout the year. You may have talked to your friend at Netflix or whatever it is, and there's nothing open. It doesn't mean there will never be anything open. It means that you should check back frequently because something in their environment could have changed and then another role happens to open and you don't want to miss it. By the way, Segment is hiring 2 CERT engineers as well as many other types of engineers and product folks. Always hiring somebody. And so if you're not ready to leave your job yet, maybe you're just kind of mad at them, you can join the InfoSec community on Twitter. That's where all of us hang out, even if we're just lurking. You can check out the different lists and see which one appeals to you. You'll find plenty of security people there to give you advice or encouragement. And since many of us really feel like we're doing a variation of the same job, we may be able to give you better and more specific advice than just like your non-security friends who are engineers. But I get like social media in 2020 is kind of a weird combination. So I bet if it's like a big cup of no gracias por mí, there are online meetups happening still where you can connect with like-minded people and just learn from them. But be mindful of other security folks' time. Every security person you know, including you, is extremely busy, always to the point where you feel like if that one more thing happens, you're out. No more security work for you. So make sure that you use their time wisely and you find a meaningful way to reward them for their help. In other words, feed the community. Well, I hope you've enjoyed all the incident stories, emotional reflection exercises, tactical maneuvering, and suggestions to improve security beyond the confines of your company's walls. Remember to help center yourself and others during and after a big security incident. Make sure you take steps to recover before you storm the castle. And I sincerely hope the rest of your 2020 proves to be a hero's journey for you. Your work is important to your customers. It's important to your company. And if it doesn't feel like that, remember that your security community can help you through that, whether it's advice or commiseration or helping you find a new job. I appreciate you spending time with me today. Thank you so much. And best of luck with your security roadmap next year.
All right. Thank you very much, Coleen, for kicking us off with that informative talk. I personally could not have come with a better keynote speech that is, one, practical for defenders and practitioners, but then also highlights, the importance of mental health. I don't think that's being talked about enough, especially during a time like quarantine. We do have a few questions here, and then we'll go ahead and transition there. And a first question, just kind of staying on that topic of mental health, you talked a lot about the emotional piece up front, reflection. But then after an incident, what do you do with your team as an information security leader to rebound morale? Is it wrong to have an offsite or like a pizza party? Like what does that look like?
It is so not wrong to spend your company's money to help repair that damage. It really depends on what is normal for your team. It depends on what's normal for your company, but every company should have some sort of employee morale budget, and that is the perfect time to use it. I would say maybe before setting something like that up, poll your team, maybe not in an open way because they may not want to respond negatively in front of everyone else, but maybe individually poll them and say like, hey, this was a really tough incident, but you did a great job. And so we're thinking of something fun to do as like a release valve. What do you think about all of us doing, if non-COVID times, miniature golf or something like that? You might find that people on your team don't find that restful and relaxing. And so you might have to split things up 2 ways. Your more social folks who really find it soothing to hang out with their security friends, you could do something like that. You can always give out gift cards. You can send books to folks. But there are little things that you can do. You can have donuts delivered. If a person's a donut fan, I would say find out what's important to them and how they prefer to relax and celebrate, and then go off of that. And you may have to do two different things.
Okay. And another question for you. So during I wrote it down, like fighting back the spooky scenarios. There's a question: how does that differ or kind of compare to threat modeling exercises when it comes to interacting with the product teams in that way?
Yeah, I think it's actually very, very similar. What I think probably could be missing from the threat model is first invite enough people, because if it is just security people sitting around and doing this exercise, it may not have the full benefit that you want it to. I would say what turns it into a scary story is adding details like what is the PR headline that comes out about our company? How much business is lost in terms of ARR? Which companies stop doing business with us because of this thing? And really making sure that you put a business focus on it, because I think that's probably scarier to a larger group of people than just the worst case security outcome. So if it's complete, it's got all of the security sequential features to it. And then it has like, and this is what happens to us legally. This is what happens to an exec. This is what happens, headlines. And I really say would like dress it up, make sure that it has like a personality. So Eric Ellett on our team, he is really passionate about putting these security stories together. He'll go through the step of actually like, who is this person who's attacking us? Why are they motivated to do it? He'll name them, and we'll actually have almost like a description of who this adversary is. It's not just like person X. It actually is like, this, it's phishing Fred or whatever it is. And like, what motivates phishing Fred? How does this person work? How do they think about our company? How long have they been watching us? So putting a little bit more of story element behind it, in addition to your traditional threat model stuff, plus the linking of tickets, I really think is a great way to make it so that all audiences in your company who read it will equally be scared.
Okay. And we have time for, I think, just one last question, and thank you here. So what kind of detail can you provide around the weekly email or metrics? Specifically, what metrics are you gathering there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thanks for that. We were, like all companies, you probably have SLAs around how quickly you want your vulns to be cured. And for a P1, it might be one day, P2 might be a week, etc. You need a way of tracking who is late. So it's these tickets that you have, but then it's also by group, who's not solving these on time. And so it's really late vulnerabilities, not vulnerabilities themselves, because every time you make something, you might create some vulnerabilities, or every time folks learn more about how your stuff works, more vulnerabilities can be uncovered. That's a natural thing. That's your bug backlog. But not fixing them in a timely manner, that's the problem. That's when bad things happen. That's a normal process for all of us security people to like uncover problems. But then when we don't get the support that we need to cure those problems in a timely manner, that's actually what should be highlighted. And I don't think I did a good job of showing you that on the slides. I apologize. But yeah, that's what you want to show is who's late by group, by department. And then even over time, like who's habitually late, because then that can give your executive team information like, well, perhaps that department is understaffed. Perhaps they have too many areas of focus. Maybe they don't take maintenance or product quality seriously. Like we don't know what those are, but I do think that those types of metrics on a regular basis can give your executives meaningful information so they can make good decisions on changing things up.
All right. And thank you very much, Coleen, especially from us at LocalMoCoSec for kicking us off. And a big aloha to you. Please continue to stay safe and all the best on your upcoming adventures with Twilio. Again, guys, this is really practical stuff here. Sustainable security, addressing vulnerabilities in ourselves first. That's important.